Okay, we're on. Carol, Eric, flirting with reality. Stay tuned because this is going to be crazy.
Super crazy.
Woo! Yeah, you're here. And we're luring you into watching the whole thing so you don't get bored from the get-go talking about my day or Carol's day. Today, we decided we're going to start out talking about money and like what's happening with money in the world right now.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. Shit's really expensive. And yeah, it's an interesting subject to talk about.
Well, I think the thing that we think is interesting is not only things are so expensive, but there's a lot of things happening with that. Like, are people limiting their spending?
I don't see it. Majority, I don't see it. Me and my dad, were talking about that yesterday. He was like, I'm not seeing this is a hurting economy. I mean, there's cars driving everywhere, getting gas all the time. I mean, everybody's pulling up at Walmart, the mall. Yeah, it doesn't seem as though it's slowing down.
But it has to be, right? Like people have to be running out of money. Like to some extent. At least when you zoom out, I think when gas prices go up, I think there's got to be a percentage of people that don't go on vacation in the summer.
For sure, yeah.
There's got to be a percentage of people that don't buy this, don't buy that. But I think what you and I have been talking about is, what was it? So it was in the 80s, people didn't really have credit. There was no such thing as there was, like, you could buy a house.
Very few people had, yes, with houses. I remember, like, when I first started seeing the credit card symbols on store doors.
Everybody was writing checks before that.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing I like to think about and tell people, apparently, but about my old BMWs that I drive is, I think that's one of the coolest things is these cars were made in the early 80s, like 82, 83, and these cars they were selling for like $40-something thousand in 1983, which is still mind-blowing to me. I wouldn't spend, me personally, I don't spend $40,000 on a car in 2024. So 40 years ago, to spend that kind of money is just like, wow. But that's why it was such a big deal too, is because today people spend $100,000 on a car, but they don't have $100,000 to spend on a car. They all get it on credit, which is a totally different thing. And that's what makes the BMWs cool to me is, something like my 7 Series or my 5 Series, like you had to have saved money or had an amazing job to own one of those cars. Like you had to be, quote unquote, a special person. You couldn't just be just a regular blue collar, just not making money kind of person. You just wouldn't own that car. And I think that's actually kind of cool. Not if like you inherited money or like you got easy money, like that's not so cool. But if you worked, it was kind of, I think that's where we got this idea of like, hey, look at me, like I have nice stuff, like I'm a badass. But today it's just like everybody just looks like a badass and spends money on credit, which is funny, but it's just kind of a different way to look at things. But like in the 80s, we didn't have credit like we do today. But that's the funny thing is, like, you think about that, like we have so much credit. Like people credit is essential for people these days. Like,
yeah, that thing I was doing today, he said the average 75% of homes have an average of $100,000 of debt.
well, what was it? I looked it up you one time. I think we were looking up who has more than $1,000 saved. It wasn't like 90% or something like that don't have $1,000 in the bank.
Yeah, that's another thing he said. If you have money in your bank account and money in your wallet, you are of the 8% richest people in the world.
8%?
Yeah, so most people don't have cash in their wallet and in their bank, I guess.
In their wallet?
That's what he said.
Who don't have money in their wallet?
I don't.
You don't?
Never.
Really? You don't carry like $1 even in your wallet?
I have $1 in my coat pocket.
Really?
Yeah. I don't carry cash.
Hmm. But you could.
I could.
So then you could be the top 8% if
I
you just
could.
withdrew a
I
little
was
bit of
thinking
money.
you and Porter are. Well, and Piper.
Yeah. I don't know if that seems crazy. But yeah, but we looked that up and it's if you have $1,000 in your bank account, you are a small percentage.
Yeah.
But this is what we're talking about is a vast majority of the population doesn't have $1,000 in their bank account. So a vast majority of the population is over their head in debt, and that's what you're saying, $100,000, 75%.
Yeah, and this is where I would like to be the voice of I was in debt a few years ago, but it's possible to pay it off.
Yeah,
You have to tighten your purse strings, but also an amazing thing that changes when we've both talked about this. One of like the best time of your life is when you have less. Like one of the best times of my life is when I had that condo and I had $50 every 2 weeks to spend. We've been tightening our strings, and in all honesty, it feels like uplifting to me. It feels great to look at what you have because we do these gratitude sessions together and by ourselves. And this is where that wealth thing that Jay Shetty was talking about today comes in. That's what I mean. Gratitude is wealth. Like, really taking a look at what you have is wealth. But being able to tighten your strings and quit the spending and start like living within your means is going to take away a stress that you're putting on yourself.
well, but that's what it is you don't want to get on a budget and live within a budget. Like there's a resistance, but that's what you're saying is it's made us feel good because you're actually stressing out whether you know it or not because you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm not living within my means, and so I'm stressed out. And then when you go in a budget, you're like, oh, like this is totally in control, and I've got this. But people don't want to do it, including us. You
Yeah,
know?
but again, you can find your wealth in other ways and you can work towards riches. I mean, if that's what you're wanting. It, living within your means, you're putting yourself in a situation where getting rich is getting farther and farther away from you.
Yeah. But I think something that we're very fortunate for having is that you and I both aren't super materialistic people.
Yeah.
You know, my newest car is a 1994. It's 30 years old now. Well, and you drive an old car, but that's I influenced you.
Yeah, but I mean, uh, I literally am at a place in my life right now that just having what I really need is very fulfilling. And
Yeah.
I'm not really needing, I mean, I'm not needing anything other than that car. That car is running amazing and getting me where I need to go. And yeah, I don't need anything else.
Well, and I think I know I could ride a bike. The wintertime around here would kind of suck because it rains
Yeah,
a
that'd
lot.
be rough for me.
But if it weren't for the rain, like if we lived in Florida or Arizona or something, you could talk me into getting rid of all my cars easily. Well, Arizona, 120 degrees. I could do it. I could do it. But I've lived on a bike before. And it was, you want to talk about not having things being the best time of your life? Me, when I lost my driver's license and I only had a bike, it was amazing. It was
Yeah.
so awesome.
I mean, I think these things that we're talking about, living within your means, can be like a really amazing, fulfilling, and rewarding experience. And I think that's a good example of how you could initially be like, oh my God, my life is going to suck. And then all of a sudden, it's opening you up to really empowerment because you are like getting the exercise and getting everywhere you need to go. And it seems like it would be very empowering.
Yeah. When I made a trailer so I could like pull groceries home and stuff. And, that for me is like what you're saying, super empowering to be able to do things. I run errands and it was awesome. But the point I'm making is you and I don't need a lot. And I think that's where we're blessed. But that's where I feel like other people are running into problems. And that's what you and I have kind of looking around going, well, how are all, number one, how are all these people spending this money? But number two, where are they getting it? And you can only guess. I mean, if you're already 100,000 in debt, you're just like, well, just keep ringing it through. Like, let's just more loans. Like, and it's like, wow. So, you know, it's tough if you don't know how to limit your spending, which I think a lot of people. I mean, can you imagine growing up, you know, upper middle class and your family's never limited you? You've never limited yourself. You just always just had enough that you wanted to spend on everything and like never had any problems. And that's where I think I'm fortunate is I grew up poor. And so I know how to save because that's what we had to do. We pinched pennies, but a lot of people, from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like a lot of people know how to cut back, like even cut back.
I think there's a larger problem it's two problems too, is you're not having the inner happiness. You're and I'm not saying it's that case for every person, but you're looking for fulfillment in things, and it's that instant gratification or short-term gratification that it's very fleeting and short, and especially with this cosmetic craze that's going on with like TikTok showing you like all these products that you should have. And this is just one example. I'm sure there's things for men too that are just like that. But they literally are, you just go buy this thing and you just have a drawer full of things that you don't use. But the amount of money that is going into these like cosmetics and things that you're not using, but it's like a dopamine hit that you're buying it and then you don't even want it anymore. And it's the first problem, like I was talking about. I think that's why, yes, you have your background of not growing up with much. I grew up in a middle class home, but my dad like limited, like I couldn't just go buy whatever I want, which I appreciate. And yes, he bought me a vehicle, but I was responsible for my own gas and I had to get a job to maintain that vehicle. And without that, like if it would have just been provided for me, I don't know. But I digressed a little bit. But I think if you have the inner fulfillment, the wealth thing that I was kind of talking about, then this instant gratification thing is not as big of a deal to you.
Yeah. Well, and I just think I can only imagine how scary it would be if you're looking around today. If you're looking around, you're like, oh my gosh, everything costs so much money, but you're not changing your habits. That's got to feel really scary.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God, I need to go get a college degree, or
Oh, I don't think they think that far into it. Do you?
I'm giving like out examples. I'm sure some people do. I thought that at one point. I'm like, oh, I have to have a college degree so I can make this amount of money to make this certain type of living. But yeah, I'm sure people put all sorts of pressure on themselves I can't even imagine.
Well, and I guess that's an interesting thought too. Like, what you just took an assumption that people are, instead of, mine is like, if things get too expensive, I cut back on spending. But that's another way to look at it is don't cut back on spending, but go out and make more, which makes sense too if you're able to do that. There's
Yeah.
a couple ways to do it, but I think to me it's like what you've said, like you live within your means. That's one of those dead sayings that are no longer said. Like nobody says that anymore. That's like you're old school if you talk about living within your means. 75% of houses are 100,000 in debt. That's you guys haven't been living in your means for a long time.
Well, I have a good example. I have a relative, and I won't name this person, but um, there was this cabin at the bottom of the hill where my dad and uncle live up on this hill, and they told him about it, and it was like $400 a month. And he went and looked at it, and he was like, "I'm not going to live in a place like that. I mean, that's disgusting." And I don't know, I didn't see it, but it just leads me to think that everybody wants this perfect granite countertop,
Mm-hmm.
white walls, like perfect place. And while that may feel good when you first get in there, when you're trying to make that rent, that stress that it's putting on you is taking away from your well-being and
Yeah.
your balance. And it's just a lot to put on yourselves when you can be perfectly happy in a cabin that's like well taken care of and kept up, but it just doesn't have granite countertops and like your latest modern stuff.
Well, what do you think that is? Because I think that's definitely a thing. Like when I was 16, if you would have given me the crappiest car in the world, I'd have been like, sick. Thank you. This is like things smoking and like parts are falling off and like I gotta put my foot out the door to stop. Like I'm still stoked. Thank you very much. But then there's people. Well, I don't need to name names, but there was a person in my life when I was close to 16, and my stepdad bought them a car, and they were like, "Don't want it," and so they just didn't. They had no car because they didn't want. I guess in that situation, it was all about. Well, and it makes sense because I don't have this problem, but it's about self-image. It's about your
Yeah.
self-worth being. I mean, that's what we were just talking about, right? In the '80s, if you had a BMW, like all of a sudden you're a super cool guy. Like what you have and what you wear and what you drive makes you who you are. And that's the furthest belief I have. Like who you are has nothing to do with what you own or what you drive. And so today I would still stay in a $400 cabin. I would drive a car that barely runs, and I'd wear clothes that have holes. I wear clothes that have holes in them. And if you judge me for it, I don't really care what you think.
Well, this is what we were talking about when you're wealthy. And wealthy meaning that you have good attributes, you have gratitude and characteristics and
Wealthy, not
values.
speaking about money.
Yes.
Wealth, as in
You have deep connection in your relationships, but overall, you have a good friendship with yourself. And I mean, a lot of people find value in, I mean, I talked to you about this when like every woman needed an Escalade, and I don't mean every, but a lot of women during a time like that was what they were trying to attain is an Escalade to put their children in with the white walls and the granite countertops. And I'm not saying you can't strive for those sort of things, and I'm not saying that they're bad at all, but if you find your worth in that, I mean, it's a hard place to be because you could lose that at any time. But if you have wealth and inner well being, which is wealth to me, that's where you're wealthy, the difference between being wealthy and rich, then it doesn't matter if you have it or you have it and you lose it. It just, you're still standing and you're still you. It's like you were talking about. You don't care if you have holes in your clothes. I don't either. I have holes in my like almost every single pair of my socks, and I don't care. It just, they're still working right now. When they stop working, I'll get new socks. But when you find your value in things, it's just a hard place to be.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about. You having your value determined on what everybody thinks of you. Like it seems like you would never reach the goal of where you want to be. It seems
No,
like,
you're not ever going to. That's why you're on this continuous thing of buying things.
yeah,
It never works because you're not fulfilled on the inside. You're using external things and oh, that didn't work. What's the next thing? What's the next
but
thing?
is it that you're not fulfilled, or is that you're not getting enough approval from society for everything that you have?
Oh, I mean, you're never going to be fulfilled because you're not
I don't,
internally
but
fulfilled.
that's what I always thought too. But that's what I'm saying is to live in that cabin, that $400 cabin, that's not about fulfilling that person. It's about what will other people think of me if I live in that cabin,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So if you're constantly buying things, a lot of that has to be I'm constantly buying things so I can constantly get approval from other people about how
Yeah.
cool I am.
Yeah.
But then when you don't get the approval, you have to keep buying. It's like getting approval for what? Having Uggs or the newest Jordans or whatever. But if I don't know, I'm kind of getting deep into this, but what if you make up how people look at you as not getting approval, but they are giving you approval? You have to keep buying because that's the only way you know to get approval and be fulfilled. So you just keep buying and you keep buying. At what
Yeah.
point are you satisfied and you go like, "Oh man, I am here.
Never.
People think I am sick. That I own the coolest things. Like I can finally stop spending money because I'm here.
The
I'm here.
weird
Got it."
thing about that is if you really think about people, I mean, most people don't give a shit. Like, and don't get me wrong, there are people who are going to make fun of your shoes for sure. I don't hang out with those people. It doesn't really happen to me, but I mean, I'm sure it happens. But I forget where I was going with that. But
But I don't know. It's all like there's a lot of things clicking for me right now because the funny thing is, so if you're the person that buys everything looking for approval from people, you're probably not going to get there unless you reach such a level that you are like extremely rich and you have like indoor swimming pools and indoor bowling alleys and you have
there's
like
still an emptiness there.
there is, but that's when people are actually going to be like, wow, I want to be your friend.
Yeah, but you're going to start suspecting people using you.
Well, but they are using you.
Exactly. So you're not going to have deep relationships. You're going to have
Yeah.
very surface level relationships, and it's not going to be, you're probably going to get to a point you're going to go, if you get there, you're going to be like, fuck, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. This is very, like, I can't trust anyone and I don't have any close relationships, which, let's be honest, this is what people are really mostly striving for is love and connection. And I just, it's a go nowhere situation.
But then that's what I'm saying. A lot of things are clicking for me. But then there are a lot of people that are okay with people using them and they're using people like
Sure.
some let's just say some like 65-year-old bald fat man that's ugly that goes to the strip club and he's like, "Hey girls, I got money and I got a yacht." And they're,
For sure.
"Hey," and so now all of a sudden he's got like
Yeah.
20 girlfriends and that he's stoked because that's all he really cares about. Those girls are stoked because that's all they really care about. But it's all fake and it's all not fulfilling and it's all
For sure. It's very surface level. There absolutely are those people too. Yeah.
yeah. So that's
Who
what
are
I'm
going
saying.
to enjoy being there. Or they think they are.
Yeah.
They're probably addicted to being there.
Well, but it's yeah. That's the funny part is like, who cares if you can buy a friend? Like, who cares? You know, it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're probably deep into their programming, and that's like a whole nother subject.
But that's also an interesting part is if you live within your means, if you dress down and you drive a car that you can afford, you do all this, it eliminates all those people that would use you. It get like listen, I'm not saying like you're gonna have a million friends flooding in, but it gets rid of all the shitty people. So it's like not only should you not like buy a bunch of material items because that's not how you get fulfilled, and you can save money and you can be less stressed out, but now you don't have to deal with the people who are only around you because they like your car. Maybe you go out on the weekends and they can use your four-wheeler, they can, like use your bowling alley, whatever whatever you're talking about. It's like it's kind of like it was interesting. Alex Hormozy had a post the other day, and he said, "When you're poor, you spend a ton of money to look like you're rich, but as soon as you're rich, you usually don't want people to know you're rich, and so you dress down so you don't look like you have a ton of money." So it's kind of like I don't know. He also says like poor people are always trying to impress other poor people by looking like they're not poor, but you are. Like
Yeah,
it's
I think,
funny. Like,
yeah, it is funny. Yeah, it's interesting to think about.
but that's also how you get poor is by trying to be somebody you are not.
It's true. And, another thing that you get from living in that cabin and wearing the clothes that you can afford is humility, which I think is a huge characteristic on growth, like in development and learning to like be comfortable and confident with yourself. So a lot of things could come with that.
Yeah, and I guess I'm weird now that I think about it, and maybe it's just I don't know, but like if you're talking about a $400 cabin, it's easier for me to think about like when I was in high school, I had a 1975 F100, and it was used. It was like primer gray. It was kind of rusty and had exhaust leaks, and but there was something about driving that truck that was like what you're saying, like it humbled you. But it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
But I think I would have that feeling living in a $400 cabin where I'd be like, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Or like living in the back of a car or something. I'd be like, this is kind of fun. Like this is like I don't know. I get off on it for some reason where a lot of people are like, like I don't, no way. I'd be like, this is sick. Like fun.
I think there'd be a lot to learn from it. I know when I was living in a one bedroom condo, like I learned a lot about myself, and I couldn't afford cable, and I didn't have internet, and it was actually a very good experience.
Yeah, I think you're a lot like me where you don't, just not your thing. Not important to look the part.
It isn't.
If I
It,
if I had $400 million in the bank, there would be some changes, but not like you'd probably still look at me and still think the same thing you're thinking about me.
oh, me too. I'm sure. I mean, I'm not into glamour I mean, my appearance really wouldn't change.
Well, but you know what's funny is you remember when we went to I think we were in Croatia and we were in that tourist castle. They take those old castles and they turn them into tourist traps,
Yeah.
stores and stuff. But we walked up to a
Oh, yeah.
restaurant we were going to
Okay.
eat,
Yeah.
and like we looked at the menu and we were like, "What in the fuck?" Like I just remember it being so outrageous, and it's one of those places where like your burger is like the size of a quarter, and
Yeah.
you and I both look at that and like I don't care how much money I had,
Yeah.
I am not eating at that crap hole. But the funny thing is, all those people in that crap hole are looking at us, going like, "You couldn't afford to be in here." And it's like
Right?
we just don't understand each other. We
Yeah,
don't
it's
understand you.
true.
You guys
It's
are
a different
totally different.
language. Yeah.
But it's like I think that's the opposite of a $400 cabin. I I wouldn't mind being in that $400 cabin. I would mind being in that super expensive, right? Even if you're paying for it, or Or if we got a gift certificate from we won some event, I really don't want to go to that restaurant. I'm not
I've
interested.
been to like a few expensive restaurants when their serving comes out and it's like that big, and
Yeah.
it's just not something that I don't enjoy it.
But
And
that's
the food was not like exceptional to me.
But that's what I'm saying. Not only do I not enjoy it, I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable for me. I would rather go to Carl's Jr.
Me too.
Just
for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that maybe that's just take a boy out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the boy. Like I enjoy cheap things, and they give me thrills, and I don't know. But I think that's kind of what we were saying is it's a tough spot today if you're trying to keep up with the Joneses.
When you can get so swept away, think about like all the things available, like Spotify, Netflix, Hulu, Prime, YouTube. You could I don't believe in subscriptions, but of course I have Spotify because I love music. But I could see I did have Netflix that's been canceled, so I had a couple. But I could see how someone could just not even know what they're spending every month.
Sure.
If you are not budgeting, you could just have you can be paying for like the cloud, Hulu, Prime, and
but
just
you got your
really,
whole family on your credit card, so it's not only you watching your spendings. There's all this other spending coming in too that you are like, who's buying this?
Yeah, so there's just think about, really, you don't even have to crunch your entertainment down. You could just have one of those things instead of 10 and probably save $100 a month.
Well, yeah, I think we're way beyond that.
I'm just trying to give people ideas on how to just get rid of, narrow your costs down if you're struggling.
This is something I've always wanted to do. This has been like a life dream of mine. And I was actually thinking about this a couple months ago. And if we end up finding time, I would like to do it for whatever, this YouTube channel, whatever. But I would like to help people understand how to save some money. And I think just going to the grocery store and explaining a few things, I think could be very helpful. I think a lot of people pack lunches for their kids for school, and they go in the chip aisle and they get the multiple pack of
the variety,
the Lay's, Doritos, whatever. And they're like, hey, here's a little tip for you. Get some Ziploc bags and get the jumbo sized Doritos. Put a handful of Doritos in that Ziploc bag. Ta-da! You just say, it's like most people don't know these things, or
especially if you get them from Costco.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that I don't know this for sure, but I imagine that the chips would be cheaper.
For sure. You get a jumbo bag.
Yeah.
You get a jumbo bag for $5 or $6, which is expensive, but you can go get the mini bags, $2 something.
Yeah.
And it's this is what I'm saying. It's but most people don't think about that. They don't.
I think a lot of things too is, especially for busy moms, is it can seem daunting to do that sort of thing. But I know when I started meal prepping and stuff, it's really just a couple of hours of your time, and you can just do it on a Sunday and just get it all done, and then it's just all ready.
Well, and so this is why we are in a horrible place.
Yeah.
Because number one, you don't know how to save money.
Yeah.
You are just kid needs chips, which actually your kid doesn't need chips at all, even if you want to really get serious about it. But people don't know how to save money. And then number two, well, there's a couple things. Another one could be they don't have the time, or another one could be they act like they don't have the time.
Yeah.
Which these are all, we're in a storm. This is why we're in a storm, is because it's not as simple as saying, well, here's some tips how to save money, and you go, oh, sweet. You got to have the awareness, you got to have the motivation, Like you have to want to do all this.
That's where I think it starts. So when you do this, I think starting with the awareness piece is because you may not be aware of the things you're doing. Like I was saying, you may not even be aware of all the subscriptions you have. You may not be aware that you are just grabbing the most expensive things at the store that you could be doing way cheaper.
Yeah, what is it though? What is it with people? Because I feel like I've like talked to people about this, and they're like, "Oh man, you're such a cheap ass." Like, wait, and it's like, well,
I think it's marketing, babe. I think it's convinced a lot of people that convenience should be important to them.
but here's one thing that should be common sense that's not, and I have no idea why. I can't tell you how many people I know that don't have a ton of money. When it's 20 degrees outside, they leave a window or a door open. You know, and then and I've brought that up to multiple people. Like people will stand at my door and they'll hold the door open and they'll talk like on their way in or out and be like, "You got to come in or out. You got to close that door." And they'd be
I
like,
don't
"What?"
know. My dad taught me like that was a thing. You don't stand there in front of the refrigerator for an hour.
Well, that too.
And you don't leave your door open when it's cold outside.
But I've told you this story. I know multiple people personally in my life in the middle of winter when it's say 30 degrees or even colder out, they leave French doors open so their dogs can go in and out to enjoy their morning and pee and run around and everything. They leave French doors open in the winter and they're poor. How, what do you not understand? Like, this is, I mean, come on. Really? You know what I'm saying?
And they must not understand.
No, they don't. But this is what I'm saying. I bring it up and I'm like, dude, why you don't have money? You're talking about how you don't have money, and then you say something like this, and they're like, oh, you're a cheap ass. I'm like, what? Like, dude, if you could literally see the dollars like flying out the door, you would shut the door.
I agree with you because if you're trying to save money, like turn your heat down like 4 degrees, and
oh yeah,
that's another thing. Or maybe don't take as long of a shower. There's like all sorts of things that you could. That's a huge one. Don't leave your door open.
Or yeah. You don't need air conditioning either, believe that or not.
No, you don't. No. Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying is we're in a storm because the dynamic is you don't know, you don't want to know. And
I think there are people who do want to know. I think there are a large part of people who don't, but I think there are some people who would appreciate the knowledge.
Okay, so hold on. Give me. We'll both think of this at the same time. Give me your percentage of the population that's like, golly, I just wish I had a couple tips. And if you did give them a tip, they would make a change. What, like, come up with your percentage. I'll come up with mine. How many people would be willing to do that?
Well, I think it would be somebody who's trying to seek help to become a better person. So they may not even be aware of the financial thing right at the moment. So I think it's going to be those people. So you're talking about 2% of the population.
Okay, that's where I'm at. I'm like, basically nobody.
That's not nobody, because I'm part of that 2% that has reached out to people for help. So
if I talk to 100 people, 2 people would be open to it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: if 2 people would be open to it, and 0.01 would be actually willing to do any of it.
What if you change 2 people's lives?
Yeah, but I don't. I think two people would be willing to hear it, but I think 2 people would be not be capable of making the changes.
What if you changed 1 person's life?
Yeah, I don't think that would happen. I think you'd have to talk to hundreds of people.
So, what if you on here did a 30-minute video? It takes you no time, and hundreds of people see it, and you changed 2 people's lives.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of work.
But then those people are probably going to change two people's lives.
No, this is the same thing as hey, everybody, listen to this. You can take this little pill called vitamin D3 and it could change your life. How many people are willing to take it? They just put a pill in their mouth every morning and then it makes their life so much better, makes them so much healthier. Nobody's willing to do that. And you want
How do you know that? Just because someone didn't comment and say, I'm going to do that. What if you made someone take vitamin D and you don't even know that you did?
I'm just skeptical. I don't think so. I don't think people want to change. I think people love being in their...
There are 2% of the world that want to change, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. But I mean, I guess it goes to show, like, that's what I'm saying. I would like to make a video. I want to make a video, and I've been thinking about it for a long time, where I go to the grocery store and I just explain a couple things about how you could save a ton of money. Because, you know, like in the past, I've been on Facebook and people are like, oh my God, inflation. Like, I bought like DiGiorno's pizza and, you know, like I bought like, I don't know what else they're buying. They're buying like these things. And it's like, hey, listen, you want to know how to be super like frugal when you eat? I'll tell you how you do that. It's called rice and beans. You know, or like, I'm not saying it's healthy, but ramen, 20 cents.
Or that bag of
potatoes,
oatmeal.
But like, but this goes back to what we're talking about, where I have a big problem. This is what we've been talking about. Schools now feed kids in the middle of summer because they're like, kids will go hungry because their parents won't feed them. These are the same parents driving their Escalades around. So your parent is willing to drive an Escalade, but your parent's not willing to figure out how to fucking buy a loaf of bread and some cheese so you can make a grilled cheese or something. Like, this is easier. Cereal. Your parent that is $100,000 in debt and blowing money left and right won't buy some milk and some cereal. You know, this isn't even healthy. This is just easy. Pancakes, they're free. You know, like, all this stuff's so easy, but this is what I'm saying is the dynamic we're in is people don't want to. We don't want to. We're just going to give them free food because their parents aren't willing to figure out how to feed your child.
Yeah, I think lumping a lot of people together is a mistake because I think there are people who aren't participating in those things and that do want.
I'm ranting about the school thing. Here's the thing. It's like, this is how far gone we are, is these people at school are like, we've got to feed the children because they'll die of starvation because their parents won't feed them. But then you take them to school and then these people are feeding them muffins, which is cake. They're feeding them cake and like what? Apple Jacks and chocolate milk. That's what they feed them. So these people in these schools can't even figure out how to feed a child. Like listen, you're in charge of feeding thousands of children and you can't figure out how to give them something nutritious, anything nutritious. You're feeding them dessert for breakfast.
I think you should do your video, especially since you're so passionate about how they're doing it incorrectly. I think doing your video, I think, could possibly show you that there are some people out there who could use the help.
Well, and let me add another thing since I'm ranting about this subject.
You are on a rant.
Another problem with this dynamic is we have let children go so far on this spoiled rampage that you can't feed a child oatmeal anymore. A child will not eat oatmeal. I mean, of course, not all of them, but a child's going to look at like oatmeal. And I'm not talking about apples and cinnamon, sugar-filled crap. That's not oatmeal. I don't know what that is. That's not oatmeal, though. I'm talking about rolled oats, like just oats, and then let's throw a peach or something. You know, kids are not going to eat that. They don't want to eat that. They're like, schools give that to them. They're like, I'm not that hungry. I'd rather starve to death.
I know what you're talking about for sure. There is an issue, but I think I think there's also people who want to do what's best for their kids, and
Well, okay, so let me say this. So talking about the money thing, going back to the money thing, even if you gave people tips, most people aren't gonna, they don't care. They're not, they're going to, they would like live on the street before they would make a change. Just the way it is.
but I think there's some people who need it because they have to. Like there's people really struggling who need the advice.
But this is what I'm saying is I think even if you really need the advice, I think people are so stuck in their ways that they're like not willing to make a change.
A large percentage for sure.
But this is where I'm going with the children is I think like my kids included, I think if say my kids came and lived with us and we were dirt poor and it was rice and beans every meal, I feel like my kids would damn near starve to death before they buckled into rice and beans.
I think they would for a while.
Yeah, but it's the same thing about not spending money. Like you're just not. The only reason they would end up eating those rice and beans is because they would actually probably die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like money thing is like I think people would be willing to go homeless before they made a change in their financial decisions.
Yeah, maybe.
I guess I'm just super negative about it. I don't have much hope.
I hear that because I'm kind of surprised because there's still good people out there who are striving and maybe struggling that could use you to guide them. I mean, yes, there is a large percentage that's like even hard to look at or talk about but there's still good people out there who would, I think, appreciate your advice and enjoy you to teach them how to do it a different way.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we can find out. I just feel like everything's hopeless. I feel like people are.
I hear that. It's shocking.
Really?
There are definitely, there's still hope out there. There's still good people, even though a large part of it is dark, I guess you could call it. There's light. There's emerging awakening. There's change. And I think teaching someone is a perfect opportunity to take what you know and you're good at to share with those who would totally be willing to listen to you and make some changes in their life.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I'll make a video someday, I guess. We got some videos to make. You know, I want to make one on the hydroponics too. I think there's more
absolutely
people.
Need to do the hydroponics because I've shown like 4 or 5 people just, my little tiny videos that I take of the plants, and they're all interested.
I think more people are interested in that, which is cool because that we've talked about this on our podcast, but it's been an amazing way to save money. I didn't realize how much money we'd be saving, but between chickens and our own hydroponics, I mean, at least a quarter of our bill, right? We're paying a quarter of what we used to probably.
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at Costco. We were going there every 3 weeks and spending $400.
Yeah.
And we're just not. Maybe we go once a month and you go. How much do you think you spend there?
I spent $30 yesterday.
So
but $30 is going to last a couple months on what we needed.
Yeah. So let's just say $30 a month. That's $370 less than we used to spend at Costco. Yeah. So just Costco.
Well, but think about this. When's the last time you spent, and maybe it has been recently, but I can't think of the last time I spent over, say, $125 at the store.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Oh, I don't think it's...
Like my average bill is usually $50, $60 now.
Yeah, like I spent $30 today.
Yeah. But $50, $60. When did we go shopping the last time I spent that?
Just a couple of days ago.
Tuesday. It was Tuesday. So Tuesday I spent $60, I think, and then I went to Costco the next day and that was $30. So $90, and I shouldn't have to go for 2 weeks more.
Yeah.
But I think, I might be spending like $300 a month versus we had to have been 1,400
I
before.
think so, because you think about Costco, $400. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember going grocery shopping and it seems like 140 bucks. And that's not even like bulking up like hardcore. That's just get what you need. 140 bucks was pretty common.
Yeah. Yeah, we're saving quite a bit of money. And see, this is a thing. I think that kind of shows you there's interest in this. So there are people who are seeking out these type of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are, but it's just, I guess I really wish, like I say, like I've always had, since I was in my 20s, I always, like, I was like, my dream job could be, I had this idea. My dream job would I be sitting in some office and people would go, "Oh, hi, yeah, we want to hire you to look at, we want to give you all our finances. We want to give you all our credit card statements. We want to give you everything. We want you to look at it and we want you to help us like memorize it and figure out budgets and like, I think that would be awesome because I think I could do it and I would also like to help the people. And then the older I've gotten, like I say, this has been like a 20-year thing. But the older I've gotten, I've been like, oh, like this would never work. People don't want the help. Like,
I think there is a percentage of people who do. The thing is those people aren't going to be able to pay you a shit ton of money.
well, they could
So,
because I'd be saving them a ton of money.
yeah, but likely these people who are seeking a budget are lower income people.
I think that's an assumption. I don't know if that's true. Like,
I think the large percentage would be true.
I don't know. Like, what's interesting is, I was watching Rob Dyrdek the other day, and he was talking about he turned, I think he said 35 or 38 years old, and had $0 to his name. Even while he's got ridiculousness and he's got all of these things going on, millions and millions and millions of dollars, he's flat broke. And that goes to show it doesn't, in a lot of cases, it doesn't matter how much you make. You
Yeah.
have to live within your means.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get Rob Dyrdek at 30 to live within his means.
Well, but that's what he's got on his podcast, and that's what he's talking about, figuring it out. But that's what I'm saying is like there's some people, there's a lot of people, think about NBA players. They're broke when they retire.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that's so sad. You made how many millions of dollars and you didn't save? I mean, dude, if you would have saved like say 2 million out of all of that, you'd be fine.
Let's say this now. So savings, if you can, you should save 20% of your income. I think for younger people, it's really hard to save that, but something to strive for is to save 20%.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you should totally put together that. Well, we need to do the sauna, the cold bath, the hydroponics, and your budgeting video or grocery shopping budgeting video.
And then we're going to go to Europe and we're going to tour.
We're going to show
Europe.
you how to stay in Europe cheaply, but have the best time in the coolest Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Leave your comments and let us know if you would like all of these things or one of them.
I guess we could have a whole podcast on just how to save money.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a couple tips in here that are like, I don't know, they feel so obvious, but maybe somebody watching this is like, oh.
I don't think it is. I think you can get carried away with some things, and I've been there. Like,
Yeah.
I like didn't know I had I'm just using this as an example, a Netflix subscription. That's not it. It was something else. I can't remember what it was, but I figured it out somehow, and I was like, oh my God, I need to cancel that. So there's stuff that can get away from you, but yeah, I think if you're not super good with money, and some people just need direction and ideas, and
Yeah. I think it overwhelms a lot of people. Like it overwhelms a lot of people, so they don't want to deal with it. But
Yeah, I luckily love personal finance.
yeah,
So, I mean, I get nerdy about it. I've helped my daughter do a little budget for herself many years ago. She's fine. She doesn't need me anymore. But yeah, it's super fun.
yeah, yeah. I mean, as we talk about too, it'd be nice to make a video. But like you and I were talking about, is when I was a child, I didn't have anybody to give me this direction. I had to figure it out on my own. But that's the funny part is I've told you when I was 5 years old, I had more money than my parents.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because they gave me money. It was just because I would find ways to make it, whether I was selling something or mowing a lawn, or I would find ways to make it, and then I just wouldn't spend it. And then, like, it happened all the time when they'd be like, "Oh man, hey man, we need to eat out. We need to borrow some money." And I'm like, you're borrowing money from a 5 year old, you fucking loser. Like, and then you're not even gonna pay it back. You double loser. You're fucking losers. But that's how little grasp I think society has on what money is. I don't want to talk about myself that way, but I was able to figure this out at 5 years old. You
I
just
was
don't.
not. I was a spender when I was younger. My sister was the saver. I would spend all my money, but I had kids very young and figured it out really fast how to become very frugal and like let your money go a long ways. And then I went and got an accounting degree. So, I mean, that's how much I nerdily loved it when
Yeah.
I love figuring all that out. It's just
Well,
fun.
I mean, just to say it, like I've had my spending sprees too. I've had my time in debt. When I was in my early 20s, I had plenty of debt, but that's what made me go. And here's, we want to make a short out of this podcast. Here's just my advice in life: is the best way to become quote unquote rich or not controlled is to not, you don't get in debt, because it's all in front of our faces, but nobody wants to look at it. When you go buy that car and they show you that piece of paper that says this car costs $50,000, but by the time your loan is paid off, you paid $110,000. Nobody wants to acknowledge that as reality. Or your house, they do that with houses. Your house costs $500,000, but when you're done, it costs $1,800,000. Nobody wants to look at that reality and actually think about what that means. Your credit card, you're paying 22% on this. So if you pay the minimums on $1,000, it takes you 20 years to pay it off. Nobody wants to look at those realities, but that is how you become poor. You become poor by spending money on things that you don't even buy. You're spending money because you don't have you have an instant gratification. You want that instant gratification. So rather than saving up to buy a car that you can afford, you want the loan, you want it now, and you're going to pay 3 times as much because you don't have that self-control.
I have to agree with you, and that's advice that I gave my children growing up, and they're at 30 and 28, and they've stayed out of debt, and I think it's one of the best things to, yeah, because you are completely a slave to that debt once you're in debt.
A slave. But then not only do you have to learn how to not have instant gratification, you have to go double negative instant gratification, because now you could have spent, so before you could have spent, how do you put this? You could have spent $100 a week, but you decided to spend $200 a week, and that put you in debt. To get out of that debt, you have to spend $0 a week just to get caught up. So instead of just staying level, you actually have to go in the negative to pay off where you were in the positive. So it's twice as hard to pay off that debt than it is to just never go in debt. It's like losing weight. Like if you just eat like you should, way easier than going on a diet and starving, and now it's painful, and like, it's like, just don't ever go in that deficit.
Yeah.
But then here's my advanced tip. is when you get advanced on not having credit card debt, you actually get a credit card. And the reason that's a good idea is because you get a credit card that gives you like 3% back on everything.
Yeah.
And then you pay it off every month, and then you make that 1%. Now you're making money on everything that you spend. So that's an advanced,
That's
like self
for
control.
advanced people.
Self control.
Yeah.
Once you've reached that limit.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, holy shit, we're in an hour. We are going to keep these short or not.
Yeah, or not.
But we're on the subject of money. So that's our thoughts on money, and mostly it's the world going out of control. And good luck to everybody.
Well, yeah, and if you're like not feeling rich, kind of take a look at your life and the wealth you have in it and what you have to be grateful for, and then it can kind of make you feel rich.
Well, and before I let everybody go, we talk about what is poverty today. Poverty is made up, and the reason it's made up is because I shouldn't say most, a lot of people in poverty in the United States are still way richer than some of the middle class people in other countries. So poverty is like a state of mind. It's like you're not even there. And like if you have a 72-inch TV and an Escalade, how poor are you? Even though your status says you're in poverty, you're like, you got to rethink that. Like it's not what you can buy, it's what you have, and it's what you mental wealth is what you're talking about. Like how mentally wealthy are you? You just don't acknowledge it, and that's the problem. You got to acknowledge what you do have.
Sure.
So anyway, Spotify, YouTube. I think this was episode 42 or something like that. Probably.
I think so, 42.
Oh, and if the guy who commented on our last one is watching, thank you for the comment.
Yeah, we appreciated it.
Yeah, it was our first real comment, 41 episodes in.
Yeah, I loved your perspective. It was interesting.
Yeah, so more comments are welcome, and if you give us comments, maybe we can have subjects that we can talk about and engage with you guys, and let us know if you like us or even if you hate us.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye.